Kazakh national musical instruments. 1. Overview of the history of the formation of the Kazakh folk musical instruments. 2. Classification of Kazakh folk musical instruments. 3. Legends associated with the Kazakh folk musical instruments. Article of the President of the Republic of Kazakhstan Nursultan Nazarbayev. 7 Facets of the Great Steppe expressed the thought that, in addition, it is necessary to release a collection of ancient motifs of the Great Steppe, a collection of significant works created for traditional Kazakh musical instruments, kabis, dombra, sybyzgy, sasurny, and others. The folklore and melodies of the Great Steppe should acquire a new breath in a modern digital format. To work on these projects, it is important to attract domestic and foreign professionals who are able not only to systematize, but also to actualize the rich heritage of the steppe. The main plots, characters and motives of our culture have no boundaries and should be systematically researched and promoted throughout the whole of Central Eurasia and in the whole world. The history of the Kazakh national musical instruments begins in ancient times, originates in the historical research records of the great thinker Abu Nasr al-Farabi. Due to the passage of time, instruments undergo changes, sometimes becoming popular, sometimes forgotten, to be replaced by new types. If over time, Shokin Walikhanov, Akhamet Zubanov, Alkim Margulan, Uzbekali Zanabek and other patriots of the nation influenced their revival, then the first Kazakh instrumentalist Bolat Zarabayev conducted extensive research work. In the study of musical instruments from the ethno-archaeological and historical ethnographic point of view, along with the properties of sounds, the features of the instrument used in everyday life were identified. Most of them were originally used not as musical instruments, but also as tools and products used at the household level. Over time, they were classified by type: percussion noise, inflatable, reed, string plucked, stringed, percussion instruments, instruments with bells. Listening to the voice of the ages, we know that our ancestors made simple musical instruments from stone, wood, plants, leather, and bones of livestock, from horns, animal entrails, and other objects, paying attention to the fact that they reproduce different musical sounds. Bolat Shamgaliyevich put a lot of work into the revival of these forgotten tools, widely propagandized them and left a great legacy. Bolat Shamgaliyevich began collecting antique instruments in 1960. In those years, the house of the teacher of the Almaty Conservatory B.Sh Sarabieva turned into a special museum. His collection has reached the number of 300 instruments. The researcher found ancient instruments in various regions of the country, studied them, restored them, mastered the methods of playing them, attracted his students to this work. In 1968, he organized an ensemble of ancient national musical instruments. B. Sarabayev, depending on the way the game is played, divides the tools as follows: woodwind, shock, bow, pizzicato, strings, uvular. Of the two strings, one tightens harder, the other weaker. A real Kazakh is not a Kazakh, a real Kazakh is a home. So the poet sang, and is indisputable that the national values and worldview of the people, gathered over their centuries, so precisely differ and bring to the mind of people the sounds of dombra. Musical instruments are the ones that allow you to play a piece of music with the participation of a person, determining the tempo and level of sounds. Analyzing the works of scientists and musicians, we divided the national musical instruments into groups. They are shown in Fig 5 and in Table 2. Figures, terms, and definitions of national musical instruments are given in the appendix. Figure 5, Types of national musical instruments. Types of national musical instruments. Professional musical instruments. 1. Symphonic. 2. Wind. 3. Pop. Kazakh national musical instruments. 1. National. 2. Folklore. The Kazakh people especially honored musical instruments. People who know how to play them, invited them to visit, listened with pleasure and gave presents. In addition, children and young people were raised in the spirit of respect for people of art. Pictures of national musical instruments are given in Appendix G. The interest of young people in national art can be developed by listening to legends and stories about the history of musical instruments. Below are the legends stories about Dombra, Kabis, and Jitajan musical instruments. Now briefly look at the legends. Table 2, Classification of National Musical Instruments. Classification of Musical Instruments. 1. Plucking tools. Types of musical instruments. Dombra, Shurter, Jitajan, Adirna, Chadagar, Krimpa, etc. 2. Stitches. Instruments. Kabis, Scheller Komis, Turbala Komis, etc. 3. Wind instruments. Sybyzgy, Saz Cernai, Skirik, Tastoic, Cernai, Shankobis, Kern, Limba, Abergi, Shoer, Komis, Demir, Kos Cernai, Whistle, etc. 4. Percussion instruments. Dabal, Kepshik, Shindal, Dalpaz, Dangur, Asatyak, Kabisbaz, Bell, Shyn, Sakpan, Shartaldayak, Tokaldak, Tuyaktas, Duner, Uranium, Shindayul Horse, etc. Legend of the Dombra. Exhausted by battles with enemies in a long deer batir, he decided to rest in one of the villages that met on the way. Crouching in the shade of a ravine, he cut a piece of wood, pulled horsehair on it and tried to extract sounds from this homemade. But the tool was silent. Putting it with him, Batir fell asleep. He was awakened by the sounds emanating from the instrument. Taking it in his hands, the Batir was surprised to notice a small wooden sill at the head of the neck, someone placed under the strings, and decided that it was a trick of Shaitan. And since then people have called it Shaitan Tayuk. Such string instruments made from horsehair were used a long time ago.